Welcome to you, my friend. I am D. Grant Smith, the growth farmer for personal development through the lens of spirituality and storytelling. And usually every day, I invite you to come dig into the soil of a particular subject with me. But we're going to do things a little bit different today because I have another wonderful, amazing person that we are going to highlight and acknowledge, a person that I consider to be a ray of sunshine. All of this acknowledges and brings into the forefront the recognition that there are people that you might not know that are not the big name celebrities or the big name gurus, but they are still having a massive impact on people's lives. And just because they don't have millions of followers doesn't mean that they don't deserve to be acknowledged. And what I am intending to do with this is to not only highlight these particular individuals, but also show you and inspire you that you are making a difference in the world. Because sometimes, especially those of us who are very creative and we're maybe entrepreneurial or we're a leader in some capacity, we are regularly giving and giving and giving and shining our light into the world. And sometimes we get a little bit of feedback for that, but sometimes we don't. And so I really want to love and bless the people that have been rays of sunlight in my life. And if you have somebody in your life that has been a ray of sunlight to you, my encouragement to you is that today will be a day that you really feel inspired and encouraged to reach out to them and share your love with them and let them know how much you appreciate them. If you want more from me, including ways that you can transform your life, change your story, and become the best version of you, I invite you to join me at growthfarming.com. There's a lot of amazing resources there for you, including some inspirational, fun, and awesome stories, both fiction and nonfiction. And right now, if you become a member, you can get what would be the equivalent of a gym membership, except it's a way to grow your mind and your self-concept, grow in your heart, in your capacity to love, and grow your connection with God, all with the amazing resources like stories, courses, and more, all available for you. Check out the membership that's available at growthfarming.com. We have another exciting edition of Ray of Sunshine for you today. One of my good buddies, somebody that blesses the living heck out of me and the heaven into me on not just a regular basis, but a daily basis, is my buddy Joe MoJoe McCarthy. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Joe. Actually, I'm not going to tell you about Joe. I'm just going to tell Joe about how awesome he is, and you can find out about him that way. So, Joe, dude, I love you. I appreciate you on innumerable levels. Getting to be your friend is a gift that keeps on giving. It's like one of your favorite lines that you came up with, the truth that keeps on truthing. And I'm going to bring that up again in just a moment. But you are one of the most inspiring, creative, empowering, encouraging, superhero, teddy bear, all around good guy people on the planet. And the way that you have this, you always have this lightness and this peaceful, but also exuberantly joyful energy. I just see you as like this big, huge teddy bear that's going around and just teddy bearing it up all over the place. Added to that, I get the beautiful, fortunate privilege and honor of getting to experience your motivational and encouraging and inspiring messages every morning that Kristen and I both were like, dude, you got to turn this into something that you're sharing. And so I'm grateful that you're sharing this now on your blog and in other places, but we both being Kristen and I, get to experience a cup of mojo first thing in the morning. And what a cup of mojo is, and you guys can see that. I'll put a link in the description below so you can go check out his blog and subscribe to it. But he comes up with these incredibly inspiring, encouraging, and uplifting messages every day that he sends to me through text message, but then he shares the same thing with people that are subscribed to his platform. And it's a way to be reminded about the love that we are, about our connection with God, about the opportunities that we have right now, not just to give out love, but also to receive it. And I stopped drinking coffee in July of last year. I don't need any coffee because I've got a cup of mojo to lift up my spirits and keep them high all day long. So Joe, thank you for being a ray of sunshine. I am so honored and blessed to not only have you in my life and be my friend, but for you to come on here and share a little bit of yourself with us.
We'll talk about a ray of sunshine. Everything you just shared just filled my life with light and warmth and fuzziness. So you just became my teddy bear and ray of sunshine for the day. Thank you, brother. And as you mentioned before we even hit record, sometimes you wonder if the things that you share are making a difference, if they have any impact, if they're being received, even. And so this ray of sunshine that you're doing, and then the feedback that you give me on a regular basis, is very encouraging, and makes me feel like, what I have to say, what I have to share, which I know doesn't come from me, it comes through me. You and I have talked about that a lot. But the fact that I'm able to get those words out to some people who are open and receptive, like yourself, and who actually it impacts their life and helps set them up for a day of success and enjoyment. I couldn't be more grateful. So the love flows both ways, brother.
Oh, thank you, man. There's one thing I forgot to mention that's like a magic superpower that Joe has. Actually, two. I said he's really creative, and you'll experience that when you have your first cup of Mojo. But if you go to his website, you can see the logo on his shirt matches the logo on my hat. So when people ask me, dude, that's such a cool design on your hat, what is that? I'm always like, this is my buddy Mojo's brand. And I'm such a huge fan of his, and he's so dear to my heart that I've got to wear some Mojo with me everywhere I go. You can get this hat and some of his merchandise that has here's the superpower. Mojo is the, in all caps, king of powerful, empowering acronyms and the most incredible one-line catchphrases that will revolutionize and change the way you see yourself, the way you see the world, and the way you see God. So much so, I named one of my stories after one of his catchphrases, and because I was so inspired by Joe, I made Joe the main character in the story. You can read that story at my website, growthfarming.com. It's under the story section, and the story is called The Truth That Keeps on Truthing. So, dude, that just so you know, in case it wasn't clear already, the kind of impact you've made on my life and the kind of influence that you have, I sometimes will write stories about some people that I know, but I very rarely will use their name as the main character, also for their own privacy. But for you, like, dude, I'm like, I'm so thankful and inspired by you as a man, you as a person, you as a friend, you as a ray of light. So thank you so much. I'm gonna stop talking because I want you to share a little bit. Without going into the details of your story, because, and by the way, Joe's story is incredible. And I don't want to take away from your opportunity to be able to share some of that, but you experienced a lot of Joe as an adopted kid. He went through a bunch of stuff with his birth family recently, I think, and but growing up, being an adopted kid, and then your parents splitting up, and some different things that happened in those relationships, and then overcoming a lot of insecurities and fears. But my question for you, you're not just a ray of sunlight, you are a powerful, booming ray of sunlight. But the power of your story is also in everything that you overcame to get to where you are. And there's a lot of people that go through a lot of difficult things, and they don't always stay on this path of seeking the light or being the love. They fall into the pit of brokenness and despair, or angry, or angst, or whatever, and blaming the world and taking out their frustrations and their pain on other people. I'm curious, what was it that kept you from going down that road, and instead you chose a different path, and a path that continues to be a place where you experience healing, but you also get to be a vessel for healing to others?
Such a great question, D. And I've I've thought over this idea, this concept many times, looked back over my life, because many of my own peers who grew up in similar situations or went through their own, challenges did just as you say. They kind of fell away or got lost along the way or gave up or whatever that is. And I think probably the most profound thing for me was how continues, how personal my connection with God, with the divine, has been. So in some of the most painful and confusing, traumatic experiences of my life, I never felt abandoned. I never felt that God didn't see or didn't care. In fact, those are probably the moments when I felt that presence, that connection, uh, closer than ever. It's really interesting. I've shared this a few times, but oftentimes when I would pray as a kid and ask the typical questions of why me and why is this happening and all that kind of stuff, I didn't get specific answers other than I'm here. I got this profound sense that God sees, He's here, He's with me, that He understands. And so, that isn't necessarily the answer I was looking for at the time, but I have to say that very personal, this God who is transcendent, that's beyond words that I could describe and understand for sure, also in a very personal connection, where I could sense and feel in a very visceral way that I wasn't alone in the hardest times. I think that's what has continued to carry me all these years. I mean, it's often like a sine wave. There are times when I'm at the mountaintop and times when I'm way down in the valley for sure. And life is like that. It oscillates oftentimes, but that steady, constant factor has been true. That no matter what I've been, whatever I've gone through, or what I've accomplished, or whatever questions I have never sensed that God wasn't with me, and that has been enough. Thankfully, more than enough, I guess I would say.
Actually, why don't, if you can, Joe, for the context and so people can understand the power of everything you just shared, will you give just a little bit of a brief overview about some of the things that you've been through in your life and in your upbringing that you've overcome, so that like there's now a context to the idea of what you just shared about never feeling alone because you had God? Because from my perspective, um, in similar but different capacities, like experiencing abandonment can make you feel like you are alone and you're always going to be alone. But very similar to you, like I had this realization that like, well, love is for me. And so I'm curious, will you share a little bit about your backstory, about the different things that you experienced briefly, that really ties into the power of knowing that you really aren't alone, even if you've had experiences that have told you otherwise?
Yeah. So as you alluded to earlier, my adoptive family, who love me dearly, and I feel so blessed to have been raised by them. My parents who adopted me split up when I was in grade school, and that was confusing enough. But then my mom got remarried to a very, I don't know if it's technically narcissistic, but a very self-absorbed and manipulative, overbearing, domineering type of guy, who didn't show any of that side of him while he was courting my mom. But then once they got married, the truth came out. And so there was 3 years there from age 11 to 15 or so, 11, 12, 13, 14, where it was hell on earth. I didn't understand. I didn't like it. It sucked for me. It sucked for my family. And so those were very painful and confusing times. And so uh, I would go, away from the family and go into my room, find some time, some space to be alone, and do the typical kid thing, and cry out, God, where are you? And what's going on? And I don't get it. I don't like this. And then have that embrace, that very spiritual yet physical embrace of God understanding, I get it. I'm with you. I understand. In very simple words, but very profoundly touching the sense that, okay, I feel alone, but then I don't. I feel like I'm not alone. I've got God, if I got God on my side, right, then who could be against me, as the old song goes. And so I really latched onto that and felt like God latched onto me, that carried me through those rough times. My mom and stepdad divorced when I was in junior high, and then uh, I was abused. I was molested by a music minister of all people in my church. So my spiritual experience, which had been foundational and uh, held me together really in many ways through some rough patches, now it got really interesting because a person who was a spiritual guide, a father figure, with all of that craziness, betrays my trust, and that was super confusing for me because I had no context, no preparation, nobody warned me that this was even a possibility. So I felt again very confused, lost, hurt, betrayed. But it's very interesting as I look back, I didn't feel betrayed by God. I didn't feel detached from God. I felt like, these are men who have betrayed their responsibilities and haven't done the right thing. But I never equated that with that God doesn't love me, or that this is a representation of God, because I think I go back to those moments where such a profound sense of the unconditional love and grace and light within me. I didn't have to equate that with someone who was being a jerk on the outside to me. And so that again, that theme has carried me throughout my life. And there are times when I am very aware of it and really embracing it and living it. There are times when I, ignored that, or try to think that I'm on my own, or that I don't need God anymore, whatever those, different times like we all go through. But again, as I oscillate back and forth through my life, the constant has been God's here and He's with me and He loves me.
That's beautiful, man. Well, thank you. Oh, to so much of to me, what really is inspiring about your story is you experienced so much of that stuff when you were a kid. And when we go through difficulties, especially with adults, as a child, like that can really impact because it influences our consciousness. It influences like our sense of self, our sense of self-worth, the way the whole world works, which is self-concept. So like you had the makings of a really dysfunctional self-concept, and yet now years later, and I would imagine you've been in this pretty good, pretty solid, and ever growing place for a while. What was it that helped you regain trust in a man or older male perspective, and you believing that they actually have your best interest at heart when you have all of these instances that experiences from your youth that told you the opposite of that, that ingrained possibly some really limiting and damaging, painful beliefs about whether or not other people are trustworthy? Was there something that really happened that really changed your ability to do that?
A couple things. Well, it's always very complex, but I think part of it was um, I was able to, and I think this is through counseling and also through the perspective of teaching that I was getting and just my own personal development of my spirituality, um, understanding that even though these male figures in authority were, were crappy examples, they weren't, they weren't the kind of role model I was looking for. Um, I didn't have to make a sweeping generalization that all male authorities were that way, that these were isolated incidences. Now, that being said, I did have times, and I have had times throughout my life where my relationship with a boss or with a pastor or with someone in those authorities, I've been either suspicious of or distant from, or as has come up a few times in my life, I just thought I knew better, right? Because I think part of that experience as a child made me, wary, as you had talked about, of people in authority. And so, as some of that played out, I did go into counseling and therapy with a very astute counselor who helped me understand that, some of the things that I did as a child that helped me survive and thrive in the midst of chaos And she said, like, my superpower as a kid was adaptability. I would adapt to any situation and still be able to find, joy and light, life and happiness in spite of all that. But what happened is that became maladaptive as an adult. When I became a husband, I became a father. And rather than facing things head on and taking, the authority that I've been given now as a responsible adult, I would just continue to adapt to situations and either skirt the issue or put it off or procrastinate or whatever that was. And so what served me well as a child wasn't serving me very well as an adult. And so it took some therapy, some understanding, some treatment, some reframing, right, for me to understand, okay, I'm now in a different role, and what served me then doesn't serve me now, and have to learn how to embrace now my own. Now I'm the man. I'm the man in the authority role. I've got responsibilities, and I can't just continue to play scared or adapting to every situation. I need to find out who I am and how does that work now that I'm the adult.
That's an ongoing process.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lifelong.
Yeah, I resonate with that. All right, well, I want to kind of switch gears real fast before we wrap things up. I mentioned your incredible ability to come up with awesome acronyms that are really inspiring. Can you give us one off the top of your head?
So I was on the golf course last summer and up on a tee box, and suddenly this acronym came to mind, the GGOLF. And so it's golf, but with an extra G at the front. And the acronym came to mind and to my heart that GGOLF, gratitude and grace overcome life's frustrations. Gratitude and grace overcome life's frustrations. And I guess you could say that that acronym has played itself out in my life.
Yes, and in mine as well. So thank you for sharing that, man. Give everybody what is the way that people can go have a cup of mojo every day?
Yeah, so if you go to mojo.studio, that's MOJOE.studio, it's like a link tree that will show all the different social platforms that I have. There's a link to my gear site, which is actually pretty cool because you can customize. You can take this logo, or you can take any of the catchphrases that I have designed into graphic designs, because that's one of my expertise. And you can put it on any sorts of clothing or gear, or whatever you want, and place an order right through that gear site. And there's my blog. There's some YouTube shorts that I've done, both stories that I tell from my own travels and my childhood, but also some trumpet music. I play trumpet. And so I made these 1-minute videos that I called the Swift Kick and the Brass. And those are fun as well for those who like to enjoy the music.
One of my other favorite things about Joe is when he sings. It's just, again, you're one of the most soulful people, and I don't mean that just from I don't mean that from a musical genre standpoint. I mean that from, like, when you experience Joe, you feel like his whole soul's just presenting itself. And so, dude, you are a ray of sunshine in my life. Thank you so much for your friendship. Thank you for your love. Thank you for coming on here and sharing your love and your light with us, man. I appreciate you so much.
That's a winner, as you would say, D. Grant. That's a winner. It's a win-win. Thank you.
All right, guys, that is this edition of Ray of Sunshine. Go follow my homeboy, Mojo. He will bless your life every single freaking day. That is no hyperbole. It's the straight truth. I also invite you, and tell you what, I just gave you at least 20 minutes of reason, and you got to experience Joe for yourself as to why he's so freaking awesome. Experience Joe inside my story, The Truth That Keeps on Truthing. Go buy it right now. It's at growthfarming.com/products. The Truth That Keeps on Truthing. All right, that's it for this time around. I believe in you guys. I love you. I'll see you again soon.